The strange thing no one warned you about when you stop spilling your energy is not the physical tension, not the restlessness, not even the hunger that crawls into your body at night. It's the memories. The moments you thought were buried don't stay buried. They come back with teeth. Scenes you haven't visited in years suddenly replay with cinema-level clarity. The fight you lost. The humiliation you laughed off. The moment you chose comfort over courage. The day you realized someone never respected you and you stayed anyway. Semen retention doesn't magically turn you into a monk or a superhero. It turns you into a witness. And the first thing it forces you to witness is yourself. Most men live in not dead, just numbed. They don't feel deeply because feeling would require accountability. When something hurts, they distract. When something shames them, they scroll. When something threatens their self-image, they release, sleep, and reset the fog. Retention removes the anesthesia. The nervous system stays awake. Dopamine, the motivation and reward chemical, stops spiking and crashing every few hours. When that roller coaster slows, the mind doesn't get wiped clean anymore. It starts replaying unresolved data. Trauma is just unfinished business stored in the nervous system. When you remove the habitual escape valve, the system finally says, "Now we deal with this." This is why the early phase feels brutal. Men expect power and instead get flashbacks, not because retention is harming you, but because it's revealing what you've been running from. The brain evolved to seek resolution. When you deny it distraction, it surfaces what needs integration. That breakup where you begged. That betrayal you swallowed. That moment you went silent when you should have spoken. These weren't just events, they were fractures. And every time you avoided feeling them, your body stored the charge. Retention increases internal pressure, not just sexually but neurologically. Increased testosterone and heightened sympathetic nervous system activity sharpen memory recall. This isn't mysticism. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline interact with memory centers like the amygdala and hippocampus, making emotionally charged memories louder. You're not becoming weak. You're becoming honest. The mind hates loose ends. Ejaculation floods the brain with prolactin, a hormone that induces relaxation and emotional flattening. That's why you feel sleepy and detached afterward. When prolactin spikes daily, emotional edges get dulled. Retention lowers that constant prolactin cycle. Emotional contrast returns. Sharp things feel sharp again. Old wounds sting because they never healed. They were sedated. The moment you stop sedating them, they speak. There's another layer men don't talk about. Identity collapse. Many men build their sense of self on distraction. They don't know who they are without constant stimulation. Porn, validation, novelty, release. When those go quiet, the mind asks a dangerous question. Who are you when no one is watching and nothing is buzzing? The memories that surface are often moments where you violated your own values. The brain flags them because they contradict your current self. That contradiction creates psychological tension. Retention amplifies that tension. You can't outnut it anymore, so the psyche drags those moments into the light and says, reconcile this or carry it forever. This is why some men quit. They mistake confrontation for damage. They think something is going wrong. In reality, something is finally happening. Growth is not motivational quotes and glowing eyes. Growth is sitting alone while your mind replays the exact moment you became smaller than you should have been, and choosing not to look away. Most men have never done that. Sober, when energy stops leaking. Id circulatis. In yogic language, they'd call it upward movement. In modern terms, increased arousal without release sensitizes neural pathways. Attention turns inward. Introspection deepens. That inward focus is what therapy tries to manufacture over years. Retention forces it quickly. And speed feels violent when you're not used to depth. You relive the moments that broke you because those moments shaped your current behavior. The man who avoids conflict usually learned that lesson in a single crushing interaction. The man addicted to validation usually traces it back to a moment of abandonment. The man who overworks often carries a memory of being worthless unless producing. These memories aren't random. They're instructional. The nervous system is saying, this is where the pattern started. Luc, R. There's a temptation to romanticize suffering, but that's not the point. The point is integration. When you allow the memory to play without escaping, something subtle happens. The emotional charge begins to dissipate. The brain reconsolidates the memory with new context. You're no longer the helpless version of yourself in that scene. You're the observer. That shift rewires the association. Neuroscience calls this memory reconsolidation. Ancient traditions just called it facing your demons. Different language, same mechanism. Retention accelerates this process because it increases baseline alertness. You're more present, more embodied. Emotions land fully instead of bouncing off a numb surface. That's why men report sudden clarity about past relationships, sudden anger about old injustices, sudden grief they never processed. None of this is regression. It's cleanup. There's also shame. A deep, quiet shame many men didn't know they were carrying. Shame thrives in secrecy and repetition. When you remove the repetitive behavior used to mask it, shame suffers not to punish you, but to be metabolized. The mistake is to identify with it. The correct move is to witness it. Shame dissolves under sustained attention. It survives under avoidance. This phase can feel lonely. You may pull away from people. Small talk feels unbearable. Entertainment feels hollow. That's not depression. That's recalibration. Your dopamine baseline is resetting. Cheap stimulation no longer satisfies. The mind turns to meaning because it has nowhere else to go. That's when the memories come. They're invitations, not attacks. What you do next determines everything. If you run back to release, the memories sink again, stronger next time. If you numb with substances, same result. If you sit with them, journal, breathe, move your body, the charge slowly drains. The scene loses its grip. You don't forget it. You integrate it. There's a difference. Forgetting is suppression. Integration is ownership. Over time, something flips. The same energy that forced you to relive the past starts fueling presence. Confidence becomes quieter, but denser. Eye contact stabilizes. Your voice drops, not because you're trying, but because you're no longer leaking nervous energy. The man who has faced his internal archive doesn't flinch easily. He's already seen his worst moments and survived them without dissociation. This is the hidden initiation. No one markets this part. They sell magnetism, aura, discipline. Those are downstream effects. Upstream is reckoning. Retention doesn't give you power. It removes the filters hiding where your power was lost. You don't become someone new. You reclaim pieces of yourself scattered across years of avoidance. There's a reason ancient rites involved isolation, fasting, and sexual restraint. Strip away inputs, and the psyche speaks. Modern life is engineered to prevent that conversation. Endless feeds, endless stimulation, endless release. Retention cuts the noise. What emerges isn't always pretty, but it's real. If you're in this phase and wondering why your mind feels like a courtroom replaying old crimes, understand this. The trial was always scheduled. You just stopped skipping it. Stay long enough, and the verdict changes. Guilt turns into resolve. Grief turns into depth. Anger turns into boundaries. The memories stop breaking you and start instructing you. This isn't about purity or moral superiority. It's about nervous system integrity. A man whose energy is conserved has the bandwidth to process his history. A man constantly draining himself doesn't. That's the brutal, unromantic truth. Eventually, the flashbacks slow, not because you've numbed again, but because there's less unresolved material. Silence becomes spacious instead of threatening. You stop reliving the moments that broke you because they no longer own you. They become chapters, not curses. And that's when retention stops feeling like restraint and starts feeling like alignment. Not because life gets easier, but because you're no longer running from yourself.